my thing for this being recorded, okay? This webinar is being recorded. By participating in this webinar, you agree that Angelique Mazel-Robbins owns all rights to this recording, and you grant her permission to use your image in any written or spoken comments you choose to offer during the course of this webinar in any manner she chooses. Okay. Really good to see you guys. Thanks for joining today. So I think all of you have been on here before, but for people that come to my YouTube channel and watch, I'm going to start doing just a teeny little introduction so that they understand what happens after I sing. So I had a near-death experience at the age of 19. And in that near-death experience, I met a tsunami of energy. And it told me that its name was Geschichte. I learned many years later that that word Geschichte means story and history in German. And what that tsunami of energy was the angelic realm. And this angelic realm started teaching me from that near-death experience and still teach me to this day. And after 13 years of a specific type of training, the angelic realm named Geschichte started speaking through me. So what will happen is I will sing a song that Geschichte taught me when I was in my 20s. I'm 40 now. And after I'm done singing that song, Geschichte will be speaking through me. So at that point, it will be Geschichte teaching you, not me. On the subject of honesty, this has been, I would say this is probably what I have learned to be Geschichte's probably biggest point of focus. They really try to get students and just clients, people in general, to really focus on honesty first and foremost, and then start teaching other concepts on top of that. So what I've noticed is that Geschichte builds a foundation of anything they're teaching with honesty first. So this is probably going to be a very interesting webinar, one that I'm sure they're going to be pretty passionate about, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So please feel free to ask any questions, of course. There is nothing that you can't ask, all right? So just relax. I'm going to sing. Om Sei Safanata. Om Sei Safanata. Ooh, ooh, hey, save Nunkum, Seiken, save Nunkum, Seiken. Ooh, save no. Ooh, for save. Save Nunkum, Seiken. Hey, for no day. Hey, for no day. comforte. He comforte. Comforte. He comforte. Hey. For note. Hey. For note. Home for San Tien Kienu. Home for San Tien Kienu. Nyam 48. Nyam 48. Home for noon. San Tien Kienu. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Good to see all of you. Good to see you, little fella. The art of honesty. It's a wonderful topic, isn't it? Because ultimately, as Angel just discussed with you all, it really is the foundation of everything. And anything that is not on the foundation of honesty is going to crumble. This is what we want to begin this webinar with you guys understanding, is that the beginning point that we're going to discuss this is based on this concept that anything that you want in your life to be spectacular, you must begin it from a place of honesty. Any relationship, any job endeavor, any endeavor in your healing journey, anything, truly anything, you must begin in the space of honesty. The reason that this is where we begin with humanity is because what we observe to be the number one issue for humanity is the lack of honesty, the inability to be honest with oneself first and with others second. And ultimately, this inability to be honest stems from a deep, deep-seated place of insecurity. Because you guys have such deep-seated insecurities, you are afraid to be honest with yourself because you're afraid that what you find will somehow destroy your perception of yourself. And you're afraid to be honest with others because you're afraid your perception of them will destroy them, will hurt them. So you're all walking on eggshells for yourselves and others. Because in essence, you just don't think you can handle it. So from this standpoint, from this understanding, we all want you to just sit in that and think about that for just a second. And to really think about, okay, what type of mindset do I need to have in life in order to grow the most I can grow? And that mindset is that wherever I am can be improved. And for me to improve, I have to embrace whatever where I am is. I have to accept it. And for others to improve, I have to accept where they are. Okay, so that's the baseline. You guys have to accept where you are, and you have to accept where others are. When we say the word accept, we mean a deep meaning of that word. We don't mean that you have to approve necessarily, okay? You're often not going to approve where you are or where someone else is. That's why it's hard to be honest about it, because you can feel yourself in a state of disapproval. And it's the disapproval that's the hardest part of it, not the actual energy or emission or true emotion. That's not actually the hardest part. The hardest part is the disapproval. Because in general, you guys don't trust yourselves to be able to handle your own disapproval, and you don't trust yourselves to be able to handle the disapproval of others, and you don't trust other people's ability to disapprove of you in a healthy manner, okay? So many people will say, well, you need to develop a thick skin. We disagree. We think that thick skin is absolute bullshit. All thick skin means is you've been putting up walls and you're acting like things don't bother you. But the only reason they don't bother you is because you've put up these walls and therefore aren't feeling what's coming your way. Well, that is obviously not a receptive state. And not being in a receptive state is not being in an honest state. Okay? Honesty is receptive. Honesty is able to hear and feel what's coming toward it and able to offer outward to others as well. It is a very clean and easy flow of information in and out. That's what honesty is. So to develop a thick skin, in essence, kind of means to be dishonest. To be transparent means to be honest. All right? Now, we know that it's difficult for humans to be transparent because you guys are constantly afraid of the disapproval or of the judgment, however you want to word that. So to really move forward in this concept, what we want you guys to understand is that no matter if you're being judged, no matter if you're being disapproved of, that is secondary in importance to being transparent. The way that this world will truly evolve and the way that communities will actually become harmonious is through transparency. It will not happen without transparency, okay? So the first and most important concept of honesty is transparency. Stop hiding. What will happen when you stop hiding is you will see clearly who wants to be in your life. Transparency is an invitation. Transparency says, this is what I've got, this is where I am, this is who I am right now. I'm working on myself in every moment, but right now, this is who I am. You have the opportunity, the choice to take it or leave it. That is a healthy place to come from. That is actually a confident place to come from. And it allows other people their choices based on what is real, okay? Which is actually the truly loving thing to do. For honesty is the truly loving thing to be. Transparent is the truly loving thing to be, okay? So this is the first thing. Now, when you're being transparent, we also want you to reflect that inward towards transparency toward myself. Meaning, I've got to keep these lines of information open to myself. I have to allow myself to be able to see and to feel what's going on with me. If I am not allowing myself to see and feel what's going on with me, then I am not in a state of transparency with myself. And if I am not in a state of transparency with myself, then I can't be in a place of transparency with others. Okay? It's impossible. This is why the concept of knowing yourself is so important. Because when you know yourself, even if you are in disapproval of areas, you are still in a place of confidence because you still have a handle on it. You have a handle on what you want to change and what you don't want to change. You have a handle on what you're resistant to changing and what you're not resistant to changing. You have a handle on what your true emotions are about something and why. Okay? So transparency with yourself really means that you're able to move into this observant point of perspective. It means that you're able to see yourself by taking the judgmental glasses off of yourself. And that you're able to look inward, to feel inward for the sole purpose of understanding yourself. This is such a more important way to live life than to always be appropriate or to always be in approval of yourself. And we're going to give you guys some insight. You're a long way off from being in full approval of yourselves all the time. And anyone who is in absolute full approval of themselves all the time, in the world today, is lying to themselves. Okay? So if you can just accept that I've got a journey ahead of me where being in full approval of myself isn't going to take place for a while, and that's okay. It's all right. I don't have to be in full approval of myself. I can be in disapproval of myself. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that I'm able to see and able to feel what's really going on with me. That's where we're going to start. So the next component of honesty is actually being able to feel what you honestly feel about yourself and others, okay? Now, this is the place of hang-up that we notice most humans really, really have. This inability to be honest about the way they feel toward themselves and be honest about the way they feel toward others. And the reason that it's difficult is because of what we explained before regarding the inability to trust somebody else to handle their disapproval of you, or for you to be able to handle your disapproval of yourself. Okay? But here are the facts. In order for anything to be improved upon, you have to really accept where it is. So if you're in a relationship with someone and you don't feel good about them, and by good we mean you don't feel respectful of them, you don't feel compassionate of them, you don't feel trusting of their ability to improve. If you don't have those type of emotions going on with someone, then it's imperative that you get really honest about that. And not to get honest about it, to just sit there and wallow in it. Like, oh, I don't trust this person. Oh, it's never going to get better. But from a place of understanding, oh, this is where I'm coming from. These are my true feelings about this. Because when you understand your true feelings about something, then you can start problem solving on what to do with it. But if you're in a place where you can't be honest about the way you feel about someone, then you have zero grounds to begin improving it. Because you're going to be trying to improve something that doesn't exist. Or you're going to try to be fostering something that doesn't yet exist. So in order to foster something, you have to understand what it is, right? You can't put dog flea medication on a cat without killing it. Same kind of thing. So regarding the ability to be honest about where you are toward yourself and where you are toward others, it means you've really got to get quiet within yourself and pay attention to the way you feel in different situations, different circumstances, different conversations, different thoughts, and really start to explore, what are my emotions about this? What are my true emotions about this? Once you establish what your true emotions about something are, then you have to ask yourself, are these emotions based on something that occurred in my history that actually has to do with this person? Or are these emotions about something that happened in my past that has to do with someone else? Okay, because often people come into your lives and they push buttons that need attention in order for you to pay attention to them, to these aspects of yourself. Okay, so before you can also assess a relationship, for example, you need to understand how much of your history you're carrying into that relationship with you. So how much are you seeing that person or interpreting that person's behavior and whatnot through the lens of someone else? Most likely, whoever raised you. So this is a big hint. Often in your lives, the approach you bring to other people, the emotions you have toward other people, are actually rooted in the emotions you have toward your parents. Okay? So usually when we work with students or clients, we often end up right back in their childhood, helping them understand their dynamics with their families. Because it is in those beginning stages that you guys start forming the glasses that you see life through, okay? And these glasses that you see life through are full of so many filters that make up all of your beliefs about the way your life is lived. Make up all of your beliefs, which then contribute to the way you interpret life. So to begin being honest about your childhood is one of the most important things that you can do. And to begin to explore the dynamics that you had with those who raised you is essential. Because when you start becoming honest about whatever dynamics you have with family members, the rest of your life is going to start making a lot more sense to you. And what you're going to find is that when you move into that observant place where you are realizing the honest emotions that you have toward those who raised you, you will be better able to understand how to start unraveling dysfunction with those in your life at that moment, especially if those in your life at that moment are willing to unravel dysfunction with you. Now, what else you can find is that sometimes those in your life with you at this moment are not willing to unravel dysfunction with you, okay? And when someone is not willing to unravel dysfunction with you in this moment, then you have a new place of honesty, a new choice to make. And when you become a very honest person, able to see dynamics clearly, able to understand yourself clearly, then you are very, very, very able to see when someone is actually interested in improving a dynamic with you and when they're not. And if you require this level of honesty with yourself, we promise you it won't be long till you're requiring it of others who want to share your world with you. Because when you practice this type of honesty, being in a place of denial, which is the opposite, is excruciating. Okay, so the stronger the momentum gets on this honest way of being, the less tolerance you will have for living in lies. All right? So we want to know, do you guys have any questions on this so far? We really do want to hear your questions because we can help you in this area if there's something that you feel confused about. And anytime one of you asks a question, we promise you it does apply to everyone else as well. So do any of you have a question? No? Keith, do you?
And forgive me if you've already covered it, but I think a lot of the reason we're not honest with people, and it was there in the bullet points that Angel placed in the adverse advertising for this. How do you be honest and not crush people when it's a really bold and potentially hurtful answer by being honest? How do you do that?
Could you guys hear Keith? So what he asked was, how do you be honest with someone without crushing them, without hurting them? How do you be boldly honest without hurting them? That's a tricky subject, isn't it? Because like we explained at the beginning, you guys have such deep-seated insecurities regarding being disapproved of that when someone is honest with you about a dysfunction, it feels like your world is crashing and you experience a lot of awful emotions that go with that. So there's often shame, there's often embarrassment, anger, sometimes hatred, sadness, hopelessness. There's lots of different emotions that can accompany a dysfunction being brought to surface or being brought to your awareness. So, number one, always assess, always assess the tone of the, how do you say that word? The environment, the internal environment of the person that you're wanting to speak to. Where are they in that moment that you want to be honest? Are they angry? Not a good time. Are they upset in general? Also not a good time. Are they in a thick state of denial? Probably also not a good time. Okay? So when you are wanting to share honesty with someone, you're wanting to find the sweet spot. So you're wanting to wait for that area of receptivity. Okay? What's that saying? A little bit of sugar makes the medicine go down, something like that.
Spoonful of sugar.
That's the type of thing we want you to understand. Now, is it always going to be perfect in that way? No. And in fact, what we find is that most humans will actually err too far on that side. Like, oh, well, I don't think they were in a place to hear it. I don't think they were in a place to hear it. I just couldn't find a spot for them to hear it. And it becomes an excuse to not be honest. So this is the thin line to skate here. It's never going to be easy. We're honest with our students all the time. We offend them a lot. Don't we, Susan? Yeah. Because in order to really get a handle of the things that you guys need to look at and change, it's going to be painful. It doesn't feel good to see things about yourself that need changed. That's why if you can accept that, it's going to be easier for you. If you can also accept that honesty is the most loving thing, period. Period. There is no discussion in this area. It is the most loving thing. Now, when you're assessing where someone is, we also want you to be assessing where you are. When you're ready to be honest with someone, are you in a place of anger? If so, you're not going to be heard well. Now, if you're in a place of sadness, sometimes that can be received better, actually. But ultimately, the place that you want to be coming from when you're trying to speak to someone honestly is the observant place. You want to be the person who has examined the dynamics and who is saying, okay, so I've examined these dynamics, and because I care about you, because I love you, I really want us to work on these dynamics. This is what I'm seeing. Okay? So we're going to find an example. Okay, we'll use something simple. We'll use Angel and Keith. Keith loves to be on his phone, and it drives Angel bonkers. She cannot stand how much he's on his phone. So she will talk to him often when she's in her irritated place. Okay, phone boy. You're on your phone again. What happens when she talks to him from that irritated place? He becomes defensive.
No.
Well, I'm doing this because I have to do this. Ugh. She says, why can't you schedule time? So then it gets in this kind of fight type thing, right? And really it got into the fight type thing because Angel didn't assess where she was and where Keith was. So she's got the honesty part down, but she doesn't have down in these times when is the appropriate time to say something. Now, there's been other times where she has approached him and has been coming from a much deeper place of, hey, it's making me feel like I'm not important when I see you on your phone all the time. And when she says it to him like that, he goes, oh.
True.
Okay. Well, that's not cool. So can you just feel the difference of those two things? What happened? Number one, in the first example we gave you, she's making a judgment on him and making fun of him. It is humorous, but she is making fun of him, calling him phone boy.
I'm making a t-shirt.
So, of course, when he's being made fun of, the first thing that's going to happen is a defensiveness. Yeah. Also, when she says it in that way, she made it about him. Hey, something is wrong with you. In the second type, where she says, hey, when you're on the phone all the time, I feel extremely unimportant. Now she made it about her. Okay? So this is why we said that it's really important to understand the dynamic and to understand how you feel about something. So if you're constantly upset about something that someone else is doing, you have to understand why. You can't be like, oh, it just bothers me. Well, of course, that other person is going to go, but why? I don't understand why it bothers you unless it's something really obvious. So you've got to be able to examine yourself to understand how you truly feel about something and to understand how something is really affecting you. Okay, so when she says to him, well, I feel really unimportant when you're on your phone. Now he has insight into life for her. He has insight into what it's like for her. And if that person truly cares about the other person, which Keith does truly care about Angel, then that person is going to go, oh, yeah, I don't want to be doing that. Okay? And they can then start coming up with solutions to the issue. So then when he brings forth the issue of, well, I've got to write these people back, I've got a lot of people wanting my services, blah, 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 then they can start to problem solve, which they have tried to do. Which is, okay, how about you set aside a certain time each day where you actually answer people back? Now, in this scenario, he hasn't yet done this. So this is a really good example, actually. Because with him not following through on some solutions they've come up with, what is the message to Angel? What is the message, Keith?
That you don't matter.
Right, that she doesn't matter. So now, do you see how this is forming these glasses that Angel's looking through? So now when she sees him on the phone, even more mad. I already told him that it made me feel unimportant. He hasn't scheduled time. And she's at a loss, because what else can she do? Okay, nothing. All she can do is accept, okay, either this is something that he just doesn't care about, and he's not really accepting how much it's hurting me, and I just have to either decide, am I going to just accept this and move forward? Might not ever like it, but am I going to just accept that this might be something that doesn't change and move forward? Am I going to be able to do that? Or is this something that's going to make me break up with him? Okay, that's the next place her mind needs to go, because that's the next step of problem solving. And this is how it is in most relationships, okay? This is actually the progression that follows. And if you went back and you really looked at the progression of your thoughts, you would see, oh yeah, it is kind of like that. So the honesty comes to new places regarding whatever solutions you discuss and agree upon, and whether or not they're followed through with. So in this situation, the phone, what did she decide? Well, she decided, oh, it's annoying as hell, but it's not a deal breaker. I'm not going to leave him because he's on his phone. Okay? So now that's an honest also place within her. But it's also a struggle because it still is hurting her feelings. He's still not tending to it. But at the same time, she's saying, well, I'm not going to leave him for it though, because I just don't want to. But at this point, the ball is really truly in the other person's court as far as coming up with some type of solution that will then improve the relationship. This is where people become nags, okay? It's when there has been a problem presented, solutions presented, and no follow through. This is where women become nags. And this is where women have to decide, are they going to move forward or is this going to be a deal breaker? And if they're going to move forward, how are they going to behave in moving forward? And start to explore, what are the ways that I can actually accept this? And can I accept this? And when she comes to that place, then it's necessary to have another talk with the person, which Angel has actually done. All right. But this is relationships, guys. This is how it goes. Every single day needs to be approached with a new heart. And every day needs to be approached with a deeper level of honesty than the day before. And when you guys brush each other off, when someone is being honest with you, just know that you're damaging the relationship, okay? It is extremely important to pay attention to the things someone is saying to you. Anyone, even if you don't believe them. It's important to pay attention.
Another question.
Okay.
There's certain subject matter that needs to be broached and other subject matter that possibly doesn't need to be broached. How do we know when it's time to be honest and when it's time to shelve the question because it truly isn't going to be productive to put it out there? Is there a rule of thumb?
Did you all hear what he asked? No? Can you come over here when you're going to ask a question?
So my question is this. How do you know when there's certain questions that are really important to ask, and there's other questions that times of honesty, not just questions. There's honesty time, and then there's times of, I want to say this, but it's really, I doubt it's going to have productivity. And I think doing it is really probably damaging because there is no solution other than my own acceptance, like they were saying a minute ago, of a situation. How do you know that line of now it's time to be honest and now it's time to just figure it out for yourself and don't broach that honest subject because it's not going to probably be productive. And maybe it'll be hurtful with not being productive, even worse. How do you know what that line looks like?
Well, to put a blanket statement on that is really difficult because there's a few pieces of information we don't know with that. Number one, have you tried discussing it at all? Or are you making a judgment about what somebody else can or cannot handle?
No, certainly you're making a judgment call.
If you're making a judgment about what someone else can or cannot handle and you haven't broached it at all, then we would say you are experiencing cowardice. There is nothing that you can resolve with someone else if you don't broach it, guys. Okay? So even if you think it's going to be destructive to say something, you still have to, because guess what? It's going to be destructive to you if you don't. And if it's destructive to you, then it's going to be destructive to the relationship. Do you see? Now, we have plenty of clients who will say, well, no, but I think I can just accept it. And we can completely feel within them, no, you're not. No, you're not. You don't accept it on any level. You hate it. And until you admit that you hate it, until you communicate that, and you figure out why you hate it, what is it doing to you to cause you to hate it? Anything you hate means you have extreme hurt about. What is the extreme hurt? That has to be broached. That has to be brought into the light. And if you're terrified about what the response of the other person is going to be, then you got to get honest about the way you feel about that person. So that means that you're so scared to say something to that person because you think that that person's response is going to be so difficult for you to handle that it's going to be harder to handle their response than it is to handle the torture you're already going through. What does that say about your relationship? Not much. Well, it says a lot, really. It says it's not in a good space. It's in a shitty space. It's in a destructive space. Okay, because transparency is what creates so much healing. Transparency is what begins to unwind unhealthy dynamics. So sometimes we'll give our students, we'll say, you need to assess when something is bothering you. You need to assess the scale of it. So you've got 1 to 10. If it's 3 or below that bothers you, it does not need to be discussed. You just need to deal with that. If it's 4, 5, or 6, you need to sit on it for a couple days and really figure out your standpoint. If it's 7, 8, maybe sit on it for 24 hours. If it's a 9 or a 10, you need to discuss it right away.
That's what I was looking for right there. That's what I vaguely remembered from class, but I couldn't remember that scale. And that scale is exactly what I was talking about. And I think it's a very useful scale. Can I pose one more question and I'll stop dominating question time?
Your questions are relevant to everyone.
Thank you. When it comes to, and if you've covered this, forgive me, I guess I just want a little more depth. When it comes to being able to drop down in and really know whether you're being honest or not, I know this is a very deep question with a long answer probably, but how do you know for sure that when you're saying something that you're being honest? How do you plumb the depths to be able to know for sure that your heart is aligning with what's coming out of your mouth? How do you know how to do that?
Well, that takes practice. Okay. And that's why we're saying it's really important to assess where you are. Okay. It's really important to exercise this observant point of view, because when you're assessing the observant point of view and you get used to that, you get used to really analyzing yourself and analyzing the way you're feeling. So you've got two important points of perspective. You've got the ability to kind of step outside of yourself and watch the way you're responding, watch the way you're feeling, okay? And analyze it. And then you've got the perspective, which is completely in the emotion itself in order to understand the emotion. Completely present with the emotion in order to understand the emotion. And then you've got these 2 points of perspective that communicate with each other. When I'm in this emotion, what I feel is devastation. I feel devastation because I feel completely powerless. Oh, thank you. That's really good information. When I'm in this place, I feel completely heartbroken. I feel heartbroken because I feel like no one cares about me. I feel unloved. Oh, very interesting. Thank you very much for communicating that with me. And so this part over here is taking note of all these different emotional states, understanding the emotional states in relation to the circumstances that they're happening in relation to the history that the emotions are making their way through the lenses of, and analyzing the dynamics of that whole thing. so that they can separate different things from the other to then better communicate to someone that entire thing. Okay, so when I was a child, I felt completely abandoned by my father. That feeling of abandonment caused an extreme sense of lack of self-esteem, which makes me feel very, very vulnerable to any type of input that we're making up a scenario that you give me regarding when you think other women are pretty. So as soon as when you tell me that someone else is attractive or you show interest in someone else's attraction, the way that I interpret it is that I'm going to be abandoned, that I'm unloved, that I'm unimportant, and that you don't even care enough about me to consider that I feel those ways. Okay, so that's an example of that, of being able to analyze, being able to really go into your history and understand what part your history is playing, bringing it into the present, understanding how it's creating itself in the present moment, how to communicate that to someone else so that they can assess, why am I doing that? And perhaps on the other side of that, that person says, oh, interesting. Well, my very first girlfriend left me for someone else, and it completely devastated me. And so what I've found is that I actually have this deep place of insecurity. And I point out other people that are pretty to scare you into thinking that I can get someone else so that I won't be abandoned. Oh, okay, interesting. So see, if two people can have a discussion like that, do you think they're going to find resolution? Yeah, they're totally going to find resolution. They're going to understand each other's perspectives. They're going to go, oh my gosh, okay, that makes your behavior make total sense. And now I see it actually doesn't even have anything to do with me. And that's what people will find a lot of the time, is that other people's behaviors often don't have anything to do with you. But you're interpreting their behaviors to have everything to do with you. And the reason you're interpreting those behaviors to have everything to do with you is because you're seeing through the lenses of your history. That person is seeing through the lenses of their history. And in general, humankind is still coming from a pretty selfish place, meaning it's all about me. And what's interesting is it's usually not about you, at least when it's coming from the perspective of someone else. You're usually not much to do with any of it. So that's how we would assess that, Keith. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Does anybody else have questions? No? We feel that we've gone into this pretty well for a 1-hour discussion on it. And we hope that you're understanding the basic components of this, which are to really be able to assess where you are and to be able to accept where you are. If every single person could do that, if every single person could analyze themselves in this way, you guys wouldn't have things unresolved, okay? You wouldn't have things unresolved, because once you understand where you're coming from, when two people understand where they're coming from and they communicate it to each other and they let each other know, hey, this is important. Our relationship is important to me. Our relationship is important to me too. Okay, then what do we need to do? What do we need to practice for this to work itself out more easily, for this to be more harmonious? What are some behaviors that I can really pay attention to? And then one person can say, well, the behaviors that you can pay attention to are, do your best not to stare at other women's butts, when we're walking down the street. Do your best not to comment on beautiful women when they're in movies and stuff. I know that you're going to think other women are beautiful, but you just don't need to say it to me, right? And that person can go, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I will tone that all down. And then she can say, what about me? What are some behaviors that can help? What are some things I can change my behavior on to help you feel like I'm not going to abandon you? And he could say, well, maybe try to criticize me less. Maybe only criticize if it's a 6 or above on your scale. And really just try to look at the things that I do in my life that show you that I really do want to be with you. And try to make those bigger in your perception. Try to make them more important in your perception. Okay, I can do that. Okay, so how about we try these different behaviors, really try working with these behaviors for the next 2 weeks and see where we are with that. And perhaps if we're catching each other in these behaviors in the next 2 weeks, can we make a deal that we can talk about it right then? Yeah, we can make a deal that we can talk about it right then. All right, so those two are on the road to recovery, aren't they? Now, if you have someone who is not willing to do that with you, then of course your place of honesty is at a different spot. And you have to assess, are you at an impasse? Are you at an impasse? And you have to be honest with yourself about that. If this is a deal breaker for you, then it's time for you to become accountable and move out of the way of that relationship. Okay, exit. And this is why. Not because the other person is doing all kinds of things wrong. They might be, but the reason that you do that, the reason you remove yourself from equations, the reason you remove yourself from relationships is because you can't get past where you are. You guys have to be able to own that, all right? This is what we tell Angel. There's plenty of people in her life where she would tell you, no, they've done like some really, really crappy stuff. And we would agree with her, yeah, they have. But ultimately what this comes down to is can you still be a part of the relationship with this impasse in place? Can you be honest with yourself in regard to being accepting and happy in this relationship if this other person doesn't care about their honesty in this relationship? And her answer has been many times, no, I can't. And so we say to her, then it's time for you to exit. Because that means that your input is then going to become nasty. All right? And that's the only thing you have control over is your own input. You don't have control over anything else. So you guys have to be able to assess if you're at an impasse with someone, is there anything you can contribute that's going to make it better? And we're going to tell you most of the time that answer is going to be no. And so out of respect for the other person and out of respect for yourself, you're probably going to need to move yourself out of that relationship. All right? Now, is there a whole nother and new level to that? There is. And a lot of spiritual teachers will teach you at that very top level. Well, you need to be loving and you need to be accepting of everyone. Do we agree with that general statement? Well, of course we agree with that general statement, but is it applicable? No, it's not applicable. When you feel that you're at an impasse in a relationship, you have to be honest about the fact that you feel that you're at an impasse in a relationship. That is the loving thing to do in that scenario. When you evolve to the point to where you genuinely can be in the relationship even when there's an impasse, then that's where you are at that point. And you can deal with it at that level. But if you're not at that level yet, you cannot force yourself into that level. And there are different levels of being loving, and there are different levels of being accepting. Okay? And this is what we mean by you've got to analyze yourself and really know yourself, know where you're coming from. You can't just throw blanket statements like, well, I'm just loving and accepting of everyone. You can't throw those type of statements onto relationships that you genuinely don't feel that way about. That just makes you inauthentic in the relationship. That's all it makes you. It doesn't make you loving or accepting. It makes you a liar. Okay? So first and foremost, honesty. You can build on top of that. And if you practice these type of things that we're teaching you guys, you will get to the point, you will reach a state, a height of your own abilities, of your own ability to be fully compassionate, fully embracing, fully loving. Okay? But here's the thing, guys. You will, even in that highest state, you will still choose those who are willing to be harmonious with you, especially in that state. And here's the greatest part on top of all of that. Your emission itself, when you're in that highest state, makes the environment of anything that's not harmonious with it incompatible, inhospitable. Okay? So literally, when you get to that highest state, those who wish you harm or any of those type of things can't even enter your field. So if you are feeling harmed, you can just know, I am not yet at that highest state because I'm actually being harmed. So there's your understanding of the fail-safe. There's your clue into where you are in your stages. And the best thing you can do is be honest about where you are and apply what you know to where you are. And do it with the greatest amount of observing power that you can. Do it with the greatest amount of neutrality that you can. So that you're not necessarily burning bridges, you're just pausing bridges. Okay? Well, that's all for today. Did you guys enjoy it? Very good. Very good. Well, we will see you all again next Sunday if you wish. Feel free to write us on topics that you would like to hear us speak about, okay? Because really, we want to speak to you guys about things that you're interested in. So those of you who keep showing up to these, please write us and let us know what you would like us to discuss, okay? Anything goes. You can ask anything you want. We love you all.